Hey, what's up, guys? This is Benny Ricciardi with rotocurve.com, and I'm here with our DraftKings and FanDuel Benny's Bats edition for Monday, July 25th. We got an 11-game slate on tap tonight, a couple good pitchers on the mound, a couple gas cans that we're looking to target, and we're going to do what we always do here. We're going to take a look at each pitcher that's on the mound, figure out what their weaknesses are, and then figure out which bats on the other team profile to do the best against them. So let's start with this Colorado at Baltimore game. Yovani Gallardo on the mound for Baltimore. Left-handed bats are hitting .308 against them. High fly ball rate, high home run percentage. Right-handed bats are hitting .284 against them as well, but they don't hit as many home runs. So if you're looking for power, you really want to look for the lefties, although righties and lefties should both hit them pretty well. The lefties that we really want to look at, Carlos Gonzalez, 410 WOBA, 290 ISO. 7 of 17 lifetime against Gallardo with the home run. So I think he's in a pretty good spot here today. Good hitters ballpark in Baltimore as well. Camden Yards, a place that home runs tend to fly out of. So I do really like Cargo today. Also think we can look at Charlie Blackmon, 361 WOBA, 181 ISO for him. Another solid left-handed bat towards the top of that order. And then even though the home runs might not be there today, I do still like Nolan Arenado. 387 WOBA, 308 ISO score for him against right-handed pitching. So I think the three big bats for Colorado that we always look at are all in play here. On the other side of this game, we got Jorge De La Rosa pitching for the Colorado Rockies. Right-handed bats are hitting .293 against him with 9 home runs in 51 innings. Left-handed bats also hitting .306 against him this year. So another guy that's given it up to pretty much both sides of the plate. When you're looking at that Baltimore team, I mean, Mark Trumbo's the guy that I think stands out the most for me today. 344 WOBA, 261 ISO, has just been absolutely crushing the ball, hitting a ton of home runs, especially off left-handed pitching. So I think Trumbo's definitely in play. Manny Machado, another guy that I really like. 350 WOBA, 189 ISO, one of the better hitters in the league overall. Shortstop, third base eligible on DraftKings. I like that fact because there aren't a lot of other guys at that position that can give you the kind of upside that he has. And then even a guy like Adam Jones has always hit left-handed pitching well in his career. So I think he's probably going to be in play here as well. Next game we can look at is San Diego at Toronto. Aaron Sanchez on the mound for Toronto. Sanchez has been very tough on right-handed bats. Left-handed bats have been okay against them. Not really a high average, but they do have a pretty decent home run percentage against them. Now, San Diego is a team that's very right-handed heavy, so I think it's a good matchup here for Sanchez. You look at the left-handed bats on San Diego. You got Travis Jankowski leading off. You got Solarte batting somewhere in the middle of the order, usually around cleanup. And then Ryan Shrimp, who's the only other left-handed bat they have, who actually has a little bit of power and has been hitting the ball well. Outside of those three guys who really aren't, superstars that are jumping off the page at me, like I said, I think Sanchez is in a pretty decent spot here today. I'm not really looking to go heavy on the San Diego team. We know they've struggled against good right-handed pitching all season long, so I feel like this is just another one of those games that we can add into it. On the other side of this game, we got Colin Rea on the mound, giving up about a 260 average to both left and right-handed bats, a whip of about 1.4 to both sides of the plate. Right-handed bats do have more home run power against them in a reverse splits kind of deal. There's a bunch of guys on this Blue Jays team, right-handed bats that hit right-handed pitching very well. Josh Donaldson, 399 WOBA, 269 ISO since the start of last season. Encarnacion is 389, 284. I like both of those guys. I think they're both in play. I like the fact that this game's in Toronto, too. It's kind of a park downgrade for Rea, so I do think that Toronto can put up some runs against them. You can also look at a guy like Devin Travis, 367 WOBA, 188 ISO, hoping he's up there towards the top of the order. He's actually hitting better against right-handed pitching this year. He hits left-handed pitching well too, but he hasn't really shown it this year. In the past, he has always been able to hit left-handed pitching well. So even though the numbers haven't been there this year, I still think he's solid against lefties as well. But, with it being a righty today, he has been hitting righties really well in, righty-on-righty matchups. So I like Travis as well. Next game we can look at Detroit at Boston. Justin Verlander on the mound, and he's been really good in 2016. His ERA is like 3.7, 1.08 whip, more than a strikeout per inning. I think he's got 139 strikeouts and like 130 innings pitched. Right-handed bats actually have a higher average and more home run power against them. But, I mean, it's not amazing. They're still only hitting 227 this year with 11 home runs in 70 innings. I think guys like Xander Bogaerts and Hanley Ramirez are in play. Xander's 2 for 6 against them lifetime. He is batting 333 on the season at a 3-hole for the Red Sox. Always seems to be involved in the rallies. Doesn't have a ton of upside. Not a guy that's hitting a lot of home runs, but he does get hits. He does get on base. Hanley Ramirez is the guy that's been smashing home runs lately. 2 for 5 lifetime against Verlander, but he's 6 of his last 18 over the last 4 or 5 games with 5 home runs. So this is a guy that's as locked in as anybody in the league right now. So I think he's somebody to look at. And then anytime you have a right-handed pitcher on the mound, David Ortiz is always in play. 437 WOBA, 348 ISO since the start of last year, which is just absolutely amazing numbers for a guy who's 40 years old. He's 11 of 29 lifetime against Verlander with 2 home runs too. So it's not like he struggled against Verlander. I think he's also somebody we can look at and put in play. It's tough because a lot of sites you got Hanley Ramirez and David Ortiz both listed as first baseman. So there aren't a lot of easy ways to get both of them into your lineup. On the other side of this game, the recently traded Drew Pomeranz is on the mound. He's right-handed bats the way to go after him. He's tough on lefties. He did get lit up in his first start coming over to Boston. I think he played San Francisco. They lit him up for a bunch of runs. I don't even think he got to the 5-inning mark. This whole Detroit team does hit left-handed pitching well. You got a lot of big right-handed bats in there. Vmart, Miggy, Kinsler, Castellanos, Maven, even guys like James McCann. They're all 350 WOBA or above with, the upside of having some power. So I don't really think this is a good spot for Pomeranz. I think he's going to struggle here today. I think Detroit's going to be able to get some runs against them. I don't know how many of the Detroit bats I really want to roll out there. There's nobody that's popping off the page to me as somebody I have to play. But just as a whole, with all these guys that hit right-handed pitching well, I don't think Pomeranz is going to be somebody that I really want to take. And I do think that Detroit's going to be able to put up some runs. Next game we can talk about, we got Philly at Miami. Jeremy Hellickson on the mound for the Phillies. And this has been one of his best seasons in the majors, to be honest with you. He just threw an 8-inning, 1-run, 8-strikeout performance against Miami in his last start. Left-handed bats have a higher average against them. Right and left-handed bats do have a high fly ball rate and a high home run rate, though. So he is somebody that can give up home runs. He does get a little bit of a park bump because he's going from Philly, which is a home run park, down to Miami, which is a park that doesn't yield as many home runs. But the way he pitches, the extreme fly ball way that he pitches, I think he still might be able to get tagged for some. Stanton is one of those guys that has that home run upside. 353 WOBA, 256 ISO for him. I mean, if you don't know about this guy's power yet, you haven't been paying attention. He put on a show in the home run derby. He's been hitting a ton of home runs, from basically off right and left-handed pitchers. So even though he's better against lefties, I do still think he's in play here. Then you got to look at the lefties. Christian Yelich, probably my favorite one if I'm rolling him out there. 378 WOBA, 166 ISO, 6 of 14 lifetime against Hellickson. Hitting in that 3 spot, has Stanton and Ozuna behind him to drive him in. He has guys in front of him that have been getting on base like Prado and, whoever they decide to lead off, whether it's Real Muto or, Derek Dietrich. I think Yelich is in a pretty spot. And then Dietrich's another guy. I mean, they've been dropping him down in the order a little bit, but 365 WOBA, 180 ISO against right-handed pitching. That's pretty good for a second base option. That's pretty cheap. On the other side of this game, you got Jared Kozart pitching for Miami. He got lit up in all 3 of his starts so far this season. He does have a low fly ball rate and a low home run rate, but he gives up a ton of hits. So you might not get the home runs here, but I definitely think you can get a ton of hits in this. Lefty, probably my favorite bat for WOBA, does have stolen base upside. He's $4,700 on DraftKings, though, so I don't think I can go and pay that kind of money for Odubel Herrera. If you want to go against Kozart, like I said, he's been pretty bad. This Phillies team doesn't have a lot of guys that stand out as individual one-off kind of plays, but Kozart's been bad enough that if you're looking for a cheap, low-owned stack versus a bad starting pitcher, somebody that you could roll, a stack that you could roll out there and still have the money to go up and spend for some high-end pitching and get some big bats in the lineup, I think Philly is an interesting way to take a look at that today. Next game, we talk about St. Louis Cardinals at the New York Mets. Noah Syndergaard on the mound for the Mets. Now, he hasn't been as lights out lately as he was earlier in the year, but it's not like he's getting lit up either. So I don't expect this Cardinals offense to do a ton against them. Syndergaard's very tough on right-handed bats. This Cardinal offense without Matt Carpenter is very right-handed. They don't have a lot of big left-handed bats. I mean, maybe you can look at a guy like Matt Adams or Greg Garcia. But again, are these guys really guys that you're scared of? Colton Wong. These are probably guys that are going to be in there because lefties do hit Thor much better than right-handed bats do. But again, none of these guys are really going to scare me. So I like Syndergaard today. I don't really like a lot of the bats on St. Louis, even though they usually do pretty well against right-handed pitching. The other side of this game, we got Carlos Martinez, and he's another guy, lights out to right-handed bats. 180 average to righties this year, has not allowed a home run to a right-handed bat all season. But lefties are hitting 256 against him with 8 home runs in 60 innings. So I think the lefties is the way you really want to look. Granderson, probably my favorite one, 369 WOBA, 223 ISO for him. You got Michael Conforto back in the big leagues, made a great catch in center field the other day. Hopefully the bat comes around. He's always been able to hit right-handed pitching pretty well. 367 WOBA, 254 ISO earlier this year against right-handed pitching. So Conforto's another guy you want to take a look at depending on where he is in the order. And then from there, Neil Walker's been horrible this year. So even if he's in the lineup, I don't know if I can put him in. He has not swung the bat well at all lately. Maybe you can look at a guy like Jose Reyes, who's a switch hitter, so he'll be batting from the left side against Martinez. Not really great numbers against left-handed pitching or Martinez lifetime. But I think Reyes is another sneaky option that you can look at there as a third baseman over on DraftKings. I think he's listed as a third baseman over on FanDuel as well. Might be a shortstop. I got to double check on that. Next game we talk about, we got Arizona against Milwaukee. Chase Anderson on the mound for Milwaukee. He has been lit up lately. In his last 18 innings pitched over his last 5 starts, he's given up 20 runs. That's a lot of runs that he's been giving up. Right-handed bats, reverse splits, 333 against him this year with 12 home runs in 45 innings. So he's given up a home run better than every, 1 home run every 4 innings. So, I think a guy like Paul Goldschmidt, it just absolutely jumps off the page here today at me. 391 WOBA, 232 ISO score. Righty on righty matchups. Goldie's always hit well. Anderson is struggling in righty on righty matchups. So I definitely think there's a great spot for Goldie. Milwaukee's a great home run hitter's park, great hitter's park, period. I really, really like Paul Goldschmidt in this spot. Outside of that, though, who else do you really want in this Arizona team? The only other big bat they have against right-handed pitching is Jake Lamb. But like we said, Chase Anderson has given up only like a 200 batting average to lefties. The righties have really been the ones that have hit him. But I still think Lamb is in a decent spot. 369 WOBA, 224 ISO. Even though Chase is tougher on lefties, I think Lamb is somebody else we can look at. On the other side of this game, we got Braden Shipley, right-handed pitcher, one of the top prospects in the Arizona organization, making his debut today. Former first-round pick in 2013, has been pitching pretty well in AAA. I read the little blurb that they had on DraftKings, and I looked at his minor league baseball stats. He used to walk a lot of guys. Apparently, he's been getting that under control lately, which is, one of the things they've been waiting on, and one of the problems that a lot of young pitchers do have. So I think he's actually in a pretty good spot here today. We know Milwaukee's not very good against right-handed pitching. We much prefer them against lefties. You got guys like Scooter Gennett and Jonathan Villar up there towards the top of the order. They're okay. Ryan Braun is actually not horrible against right-handed pitching, but again, another guy that we prefer against lefties. I just really don't see a lot of bats in this Milwaukee team that are going to do a lot of damage, although it's Shipley's making his debut, so you never know. If you want to stack up Milwaukee, I think you can, but I don't think it's a very high probability play today. Next game we can talk about is Oakland at Texas. You got Martin Perez, the lefty, on the mound for Texas. Right-handed bats are hitting 299 against him with 11 home runs in 93 innings. He does have a high ground ball rate, low home run percentage overall. 2 guys on Oakland that I am looking at, though. Danny Valencia and Marcus Semien both hit left-handed pitching extremely well. Valencia is a 387 WOBA, 191 ISO. Semien 384 WOBA, 240 ISO, has been flashing the home run power against the lefties lately too. Like I said, though, you don't get a lot of home runs off Martin Perez, so I don't think this is a game where you're really looking for huge upside. I think if you're playing these guys, you're kind of hoping they get you multiple hits today, maybe a couple RBIs and runs scored. If Semien's batting up towards the top of the order, which he tends to do against a lefty, like second, third spot in the order, I think he's somebody that I want to have some exposure to. The other side of this game is Daniel Mangden for Oakland. He's been okay. About a 260 batting average allowed to both left and right-handed bats. His fly ball percentage is about league average, so it's not too high, not too low. He doesn't give up a lot of home runs, but he does walk a lot of batters, which I think could turn into a problem for him here. You look at this Texas team, there's a lot of left-handed bats that I'd be a little bit afraid of. You got guys like Rognan Odor, you got guys like Nomar Mazara, Mitch Moreland, even Jurickson Profar, the switch hitter. He's actually got the best numbers on the team. 373 WOBA, 173 ISO against lefties for him. Like I said, it's a lefty-heavy lineup for Texas. Texas has been putting up some runs. Mangden hasn't been horrible, but he's getting a big park downgrade switching from Oakland over to Texas, which is a much better place for hitters. Next game, we got the Battle of Chicago. Chicago Cubs going up against the White Sox. Jake Arrieta on the mound. People are a little down on Arrieta, but you look at his season numbers. Lefty's hitting 205 against him. Righty's hitting 190 against him. Has a high ground ball rate, has a low home run rate, gets a decent amount of strikeouts. I mean, there's really not much to dislike about him. The Chicago White Sox lineup is pretty weak, so I'm not really looking to take any bats against Arrieta here. I think he's going to have a pretty good game. I think his price is reasonable at 12-4 as well, and I expect him to, go down there and shut this Chicago White Sox offense down pretty well. So I'm not going to be looking to use any White Sox bats in my lineups today. On the other side of this game, you got Miguel Gonzalez from the White Sox, the right-hander. Left-handed bats have a higher average, more home runs against them, but right-handed bats have done well against them too. It's not like he's been lights out to them. So I think lefties I prefer, but I think the righties are in play as well. You got a guy like Anthony Rizzo, probably my favorite play here. 400 WOBA against righties, 277 ISO. Just an absolute monster. I love this guy. He's definitely going to be somebody I'm looking at. You can use guys like Chris Bryant and Wilson Contreras. Bryant, Bryant 377 WOBA, 224 ISO. Contreras 374 WOBA, 224 ISO. Both guys have power. Both guys can get a bunch of hits for you. They're both hitting in the middle of the order. A very good order that scores a lot of runs. So I like Contreras. I like Bryant as well. If you want a little bit of a longer shot play, you got a guy like Tommy La Stella. He's been leading off lately as a left-handed bat against right-handed pitching. And I don't mind starting a lefty, even though he does get pulled sometimes when they bring in a lefty. A lot of times if they're starting a righty, most of the bullpen is right-handed as well. So there's a good chance that he might not get pulled. But again, there is a little bit of risk because if they put a lefty in there, he's one of the first guys they usually yank out to put a righty back in. Let's see. The next game we can talk about, we got the Yankees at Houston. This one's tough for me, man. Michael Pineda's on the mound for the Yankees. A little bit of a reverse splits thing going on for him this year. Right-handed bats hitting 278, 12 home runs in 62 innings. But Pineda does have a high K percentage. I think this is one of those games where it's kind of boom or bust. Definitely not using Pineda or really any of the Houston bats in cash. But here's the way that I play this game. In a tournament, Pineda has the ability to get lit up here, and he also has the ability to shut down this Houston team. Houston is a team that has the ability to score 10 runs as easily as they have the ability to strike out 10 times. So what you do is if you're playing in a tournament, take a stack of these Houston bats in case this is one of those games where Pineda absolutely stinks. I think you're going to get them at a pretty decent ownership level, and they do have upside if this is a game that Pineda doesn't have his good stuff. Now, if Pineda does have his good stuff and he's, missing bats and getting the swings and misses, I also think Pineda's a guy that you can use in tournaments because he could give you a big game today against a team that is strikeout prone. You got guys like Carlos Correa, probably their best bat in righty on righty situations. I think he's in play. And then Luis Valbuena, the lefty, really, really hot right now. And he's always crushed right-handed pitching, hitting a lot of home runs, showing off the power. Like I said, this is the boomer bust kind of game where you go in a tournament, you stack up Houston on one lineup, you take another lineup where you don't take any of the Houston bats, and you use Pineda, and I think one way or the other, one of those two things is going to pay off. I don't see Pineda pitching a decent, like 5 innings and 2 earned runs and 5 strikeout kind of game. I think he's either going to pitch really, really well, or I think Houston's going to get to him and put up a big number. So that's the way you want to try to take advantage of it today. On the other side of this game, we got Dallas Keuchel. Right-handed bats, 275 average, 13 home runs in 98 innings. Left-handed bats, he's pretty much lights out to. So guys like Gardner and Ellsbury at the top of the order, McCann, I'm not looking to put any of them in my lineup. The biggest right-handed bat the Yankees have, Carlos Beltran, 366 WOBA, 229 ISO. And if you haven't been playing this guy, he's having an amazing year, and his price is still pretty cheap on a lot of sites. He's hitting over 300. I think he has 21 home runs right now. By far the best hitter on the Yankees against either right or left-handed pitching. After Beltran, though, it gets a little shady. I mean, you got guys like right-handed bats like Didi Gregorius. If he's hitting up towards the top of the order, he might be interesting to me. Starlin Castro, I guess he's okay. A-Rod, if you want to go that route. I haven't played him really all season. I'm not really looking to start now. But those are the guys that profile the best, those right-handed bats right there. The next game we can talk about, you got the LA Angels at the Kansas City Royals. Ian Kennedy on the mound for Kansas City. High fly ball rate for him, gives up a lot of home runs, but also gets a lot of strikeouts. Pretty even to right and left-handed bats average-wise. 26 home runs allowed for him in 109 innings this year. So basically a home run every 4 innings, which is pretty high. Now, he is better at home because it's a tougher place to hit home runs out of. I think he's only given up 8 home runs at home this year as opposed to like 18 of them on the road. But again, you look at this Angels team, they don't strike out a lot, so I don't think it's a great spot for Kennedy there. But they also don't have a ton of guys that can hit home runs. I mean, Pujols in righty-on-righty matchups has a little bit of power. Maybe Marte could be a guy you can look at. There really isn't a lot of guys. The one guy that stands out, as he always does when you're looking at the Angels, is Mike Trout. 413 WOBA, 280 ISO score, righty on righty against Kennedy. I have no problem with that. I think Trout is definitely somebody I want to have some exposure to if you can afford him. I mean, if you can afford to put him in your lineup, it's never a bad idea to have some Mike Trout. The other side of this game, we got Hector Santiago on the mound. Santiago, a lefty, right-handed bats the way to go after him. Now, they're only hitting 231 against him this year, but they do have 15 home runs and 83 innings pitched, a high base on ball rate, a high fly ball rate, and obviously a high home run rate, based on the numbers we just talked about. Now, KC is not really great against left-handed pitching. Without Lorenzo Cain, who was their big right-handed bat, I guess maybe Kendrys Morales, the switch hitter, probably the best right-handed bat they have. You can look at guys like Sal Perez, who's not a horrible option as a catcher, right-handed hitting catcher, does pretty well against left-handed pitching usually. Whit Merrifield, if he's up towards the top of the order, he's shown that he can hit left-handed pitching, but none of these guys really have huge numbers against left-handed pitching. So while I don't love Santiago, and I think he's a guy that we can normally pick on, I really don't know how we're going to pick on him today. I don't see a lot of bats that really stand out to me as guys that I have to have in my lineup. The last game on this docket is Cincinnati against San Francisco. Anthony DeScalfani on the mound for Cincinnati. Left-handed bats, much higher average against them, higher fly ball rate, more home runs, really the way you kind of want to attack them. So I think Brandon Belt makes a lot of sense. 361 WOBA, 190 ISO. Always tends to go low owned because he is a little pricey at the first base spot, and people tend to pay up for some of these other guys. But I don't really hate Belt here, although San Francisco, not the greatest hitter's park. I like Posey as well, 351 WOBA for him. Even though it's righty on righty, he's the best hitter that they have on San Francisco, especially with all the injuries that they have. Posey definitely somebody I want to have a little bit of exposure to at the catcher position. And then you can look at some of the other left-handed bats. You probably have Denard Span leading off for them. You got a guy like Brandon Crawford, the shortstop, who's been hitting up higher in the order. He seems to be pretty cheap, and I think he profiles pretty well against DeScalfani. So if you're looking for a shortstop that's a little off the board, I think Crawford might fit that bill. And then on the other side of this game, we got Jake Peavy. Now, Peavy's been much better in his last 8 or 9 starts after having a really tough start to 2016. So you look at the numbers, left-handed bats, 301 average, 4 home runs in 43 innings, right-handers, 262 average, 8 home runs, 56 innings. They don't look all that good, but he's actually pitched better than the numbers lately. I do think there's a couple guys in Cincinnati that make sense, though. You got Joey Votto, 414 WOBA, 230 ISO against right-handed pitching, 3 of 10 lifetime against Peavy with a couple doubles. So he's not a horrible play. Definitely somebody I'd look at. Problem is he's a little pricey. And then a guy who I really like that I think is going under the radar is Adam Duvall. He's only 1 of 2 lifetime against Peavy, but that one hit was a home run. 349 WOBA against right-handed pitching, which is okay, but not great. 304 ISO score, though, is great. I mean, this guy has a ton of power, and he does have power against righties. Peavy's a little bit of a reverse splits guy, and he does give up more home runs to right-handed bats. So I think the two of them kind of fit together to make Duvall a pretty good option. And Duvall used to be on San Francisco, too, so it's also a little revenge game narrative for him, for those of you who believe in that kind of stuff. So Duvall and Votto, the two guys that I'd look at on Cincinnati. And that wraps it up for the 11 games we have on tap for tonight for MLB DFS. Thank you guys for joining us here at rotocurve.com. And as always, stay classy, DFS.